I'm so excited to talk with you guys about this film. But first, since we are talking to actors, I want to talk to our actors. We're going to start with you, Andrew. Tell me the first role that made you feel like an actor. It doesn't necessarily need to be like Taft Hartley or anything, but just something that was meaningful that you're like, oh, this is me.
Sorry, the first role that I acted in. Then. Yeah, the first. I'm sure like almost everybody in the room, the first roles that I had were all like half a second blink and you miss me ones. So I'm trying to think of honestly, maybe a music video that I did, which is it's a Kid Ink song, if anybody remembers him. It was honestly to this day some of the most fun that I've had acting. And to me, it really sums up like some of the beauty of acting because it was just a music video, so I didn't even speak. But the plot of the music video was this girl is she gets sucked into this video game world, and I was the boy that she had not told that she had loved, who she had meant to, yada yada. Manifested as like this teddy bear that she kept with her. So I'm in like a full-on like bear suit, and we're then like going through this video game world obstacle course, like just go-karting, all like this bear suit. And I just remember I didn't even get paid. Like I remember just thinking, walking away from it.
Don't say that in here.
Sorry, I know.
Tell me their producer. Give me their contact name.
But I just remember walking away from there being like, wow, like as long as I live, I could have the most successful career of all time. I'm never going to do anything remotely like that ever again. And that's what made it so beautiful and so fun.
I love that. How about you, June?
The first role that I felt like an actor?
Yes.
Okay. I was 9 years old.
Ooh.
And it was, this is what first came to my mind. I was really involved with the community theater in my hometown of Reston, Virginia. And I remember in the same season, and it was just a little community theater, but it was my whole world at the time. And I played Chip in Beauty and the Beast.
Oh.
And right after, I played Betty Paris in The Crucible.
Mm.
And we had local awards. And I remember I got nominated for Chip. And I didn't get nominated for Betty Paris. And I remember going to my mom and being like, but I was doing real acting in The Crucible. And I remember and of course I loved doing Chip too, and it was so fun, but I remember there was like this distinctive moment in my mind where I was like, there is a difference in what I was doing, which was a lot of like showing and posturing. And in The Crucible, I remember feeling this like deep desire to get into Arthur Miller's words and like really understand the story and really give everything I had to the play. And I think that it was a really important moment for me where I was like, I want to be recognized for the real acting work that I'm doing. And I think that's maybe when I started really considering myself at least on this pursuit of being a good actor.
I love that story. That's fantastic. How about you, Dermot?
Well, I have so many memories coming through my mind, but I too had childhood acting, like literally in the backyard that I remember. So I was hooked right from the start. But maybe for screen acting, you said something. The one amazing thing everybody overlooks about being an actor in a camera frame is that no one else will ever get to play that part. So you can be Hamlet all day and night. I could hardly give a crap because, everybody plays that, but nobody's going to play that kid that got that Sunday night movie in 1986. So I'll always remember that. That was called Two Young People When We Made It for CBS. This was my very first job. And it came out and it was called Sin of Innocence, where the stepbrother and sister fall in love. And I remember most, Megan Follows was the young actor who, it's an incredible, and yeah, anyway, Bill Bixby was my dad in that. So he was my first father as an actor and a great mentor to me as I started. So I think of him a lot. He died young, in his early 50s, and that was in about 1994. So I didn't know him very long, but I remember him all the time, going back to like first times. But then that's the only time too, don't forget that.
Mm-hmm. And Rachel, we're going to switch it up a little bit. I want to know what's one of the first jobs that you had as a cinematographer that you're like, this is what I want to do.
Oh, it wasn't actually a job. I was 11, and my dad showed me Brazil by Terry Gilliam.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah,
like
I love
I'd never seen a movie like that before. And I was like, oh my God, other people are really weird, and we get to see inside their weird minds, and we can like build that world and bring that. And I was just I was like, I want to do what the camera was doing. Like, yeah, be behind the camera and just bring someone into another weird world. Like, you know, we only have this one world, and it's how we see it as artists is what we get to share. So that was a turning point for me, for sure. Brazil, when I was like 10 or 11. But,
I love that.
yeah.
And Andrew Johnson, I've seen some of your work in Can I Get an A, which was this kind of collaboration of directors that did these shorts towards women's issues and et cetera. And it was really fantastic. But now we have like the full length feature. Tell me what it was like kind of diving into that pool.
Just really quick, I didn't direct on that one, but because it was an all-female directing crew that was like an anthology of shorts, really incredible. Give me an A if you have a chance to check it out. It's really, really fabulous. Diving into this was incredible because I come from the art world, so like I was working as a designer and an art director, and like being in charge of like everything, and you know, the constant slug of like waking up every day and like getting to, you know, go out and check out locations, getting to talk on the phone with actors, meet up with like these guys every day was like super cool. And you know, we've all become really good friends, and you know, a couple of us were friends beforehand, and so like getting to hang out with them every day, it's like, you know, you're catching up on life and you're making a movie together was like, I mean, that was so cool.
Now, Andrew, you wrote this, which is wild. I was going to say, give it up. We love a multi-hyphenate. Tell me about, because I am a little unfamiliar with the process. When you wrote this, did you kind of already know that it was going to get made? Did you go through like the shopping process as an actor? And then did you have to pitch it being like, and I'm going to star? Yeah. And how does that go?
Well, not only did I not know that it was going to get made, the process started with the intention of this not even being a feature film. It was originally me and June met in an acting studio, the Baron Brown studio in Santa Monica. Shout out to them if anybody knows it. We knew that June was the star pupil of our acting studio. She was a year ahead of me in the program, and I was like, man, I got to work with this girl. We had become friends around the studio. We talked about, maybe doing like a short film. I was just trying to get some like good footage of ourselves, something. This was during COVID. I sat down to write this short film. As you can tell from my responses, I'm an incredibly long-winded person often. So I set out to write a short film. I ended up writing a 60-page short film. So I'm like, great, you idiot. Now you've written neither a short film nor a feature film. I've just got this like, it was closer to being like a comic book than it was to being either a fully formed feature film or anything. And then at that point, that's when I sent it to Andrew Johnson, my 60-page mess. And he, you know, probably like anyone else was like, well, at this point, why don't you just keep going? Like, why don't you just flesh it out into a feature film? I was like, oh, gee, you think we could? And then, you know, so then Andrew came on board at that point, and then me and him worked together to flesh it out. I call it a featurette, to flesh it out from our featurette into the feature length. So had no idea that, you know, and again, when me and Andrew started talking about, maybe we could make a feature, then we were talking about, you know, we ended up making it on a relatively shoestring budget by feature film standards, but we were talking about doing it. And like, we were like, maybe we could just like, you know, like meet up on like the weekends, so, like-minded people, you know, like make it. We weren't even conceiving of it as a real, you know, film that would require, you know, real substantial fundraising and everything. But then, sure enough, once we actually had the thing finished, we started sending it around. We worked on a really long time on making a lookbook, which is, you know, that's the best piece of advice I could give if anyone's interested in writing, is to make a kick-ass lookbook. And I still do work on the business side. I used to be a script reader. I used to write script coverage all day. I can tell you it's really important to make a good lookbook, because that's going to determine whether or not somebody even reads your script most of the time. You know, they're going to thumb through the lookbook first. If this is interesting.
And what is a lookbook?
Sorry. It's like it's a deck. It's a pitch deck. It's a little like slide. It's like a vibes. But that's why it's really easy to make a good one. Not easy, but you can make a really kick-ass lookbook for a really awful script, because a lookbook, it's just images from, you know, similar movies. You're trying to, you know, similar color palettes, stuff like that. And so we made one of those that I thought was really, really great, and that opened some doors to allow people to. We got really lucky at the end of the day. You know, all these things. We stumbled into a few things. We were able to attach brilliant actors like Dermot and Lauren Cohan, which were able to then drag us across the finish line.
You know, there is something to the adage of it's not necessarily what you know, but it's who you know. And I find in Hollywood, it's definitely a mixture of both. You want to make sure you know the right people and you're interacting with the right people, but you also want to make sure you got the chops.
Yeah, but you can't just sit there and expect to know people either. So you got to, keep your contacts fluid and stay in touch with people. So it doesn't happen without trying.
Exactly.
Oh, totally. And if I could, sorry to interject again, you hit the nail on the head. And the best piece of advice in film business stuff that I ever got, somebody told me that Jack Nicholson told them this once, was that, everybody's heard the expression, you create your own luck, like, that luck is being in the right place at the right time. And he said that Jack Nicholson said to him, you can never be in the right place at the right time if you're not in the right place to begin with. Like, in the moral of the story is you have to say yes to things. Like, you have to go everywhere. You have to come to stuff like this because you are never going to be there at the right time if you're never there in the first place. You have to say yes. The man sitting right there, Jordan Dykstra, is one of our producers on this film. The man, Jordan, raise your hand. I always tell this story because it changed my life, and it's not like we've done anything that groundbreaking, but it changed my life. I met Jordan through one of my friends was just dating one of his friends. We met at like a small house party. We both started talking. He's like, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm an actor." He's like, "Oh, I'm a producer." Like, we probably rolling our eyes. Like, "Oh, great! Like, here we go again." Like, we're about to have one of these things. But then we ended up talking, and we realized we were very like-minded. We saw things a lot of the same way. We were nerding out about the film business. He takes my phone number. Texts me like a week later. He's like, "Hey, I'm going out to get drinks with a few like industry friends. Do you want to come?" And I almost said no because I'm sitting in Santa Monica on the west side. He's in like Hollywood. I'm like, man, am I really gonna get in my car, drive across town to get drinks with people I don't know, have never met, just because they're trying to do something like similar to what I'm trying to do? But then thankfully I felt a little like angel on my shoulder being like, wait, yes, like why would you not? Like, what else are you doing? I'm literally sitting in my home doing nothing. And so I was like, yeah, sure, I will come. I went to go get drinks with them, changed the rest of my life. We would not be sitting here today. This movie would not have been made if I hadn't said yes and gone and done that. So always say yes.
And what Jack Nicholson said to me
He didn't say that to me. He said it to someone who said it to me.
was, I brought a bindle this size, but I haven't hardly smoked any of it. That was him on his best behavior in one of his, certainly probably his last brilliant role in About Schmidt, where I had the honor of performing opposite him, and that for Alexander Payne. But yeah, so he brought a lot of pot to Omaha, but he didn't hardly smoke any of it. So that's also good advice for actors. Just smoke a little of it.
Just smoke a little.
Yeah. I was like, Jack, how big is that bindle? Right?
Yeah.
Bindle.
Bindle.
You
Like on a
don't hear
stick, like
bindle
a
anymore,
old-
anyhow.
We could
Right.
bring
Tiny
Bindle
hobo.
back.
June,
Yes.
I want to talk about Rose. I love kind of asking actors, especially what they do to kind of ground their character. But I feel like Rose's defining trait is her inability and refusal to be tethered. She is kinetic. She's always moving. She has this kind of energy to her. Tell me, for you, what was it like finding Rose?
I love the way you described her. Yeah, Rose to me is kind of like a wolf. She's like always on the move and always looking for like the tactile, pleasurable experience, and protective and fierce and kind of wild. She's like a woman of the earth. I really do think, or a girl of the earth that maybe becomes more of a woman as the movie progresses.
Just in time.
Thank God, you know? And I have talked about this before, but I really had a process digging into the character where I really had to let go of my intellectual theory-focused mind that really wanted to break down the script and understand beat by beat, stimulus and response, how do I make sense of this character and the journey that she goes on? Because it wasn't working. And then I realized that this character is not a mind character, so the process cannot be coming from my mind. This is a heart-centered character. This is a body character. So that really liberated me, and I started doing a lot of dancing. I was working with a 5 rhythms coach, and that was really cool to like bring in a dancing part to the process of character development, and also that Coach really worked with the elements, fire, earth, water, and air, which I think really applies to Rose. And then it was just looking at artwork, and it was looking at poetry. I worked a lot with Mary Oliver and David White, two of my favorite poets who really work a lot with the natural elements in the natural world. And I looked at a lot of photos of drawing depictions of Little Red Riding Hood, because she was trying to get to her grandmother, and I was trying to get to my grandmother. So it was an amalgamation of all of those different things, really trying to get me out of my mind and into my feeling state and my heart and my body.
I love that you said, she's not necessarily a mind character. She is a heart character, but she's also someone that is driven by impulse and instinct, and that's kind of the prowling wolf of it all. So
Totally.
I love that. Dermot, we need to talk about Keith. Keith is a man who is not beating the allegations. He is, he's terrifying, he's pitiable, he's sweet, he's terrifying. Yeah, he is a man at the end of several ropes.
Yeah.
And you give him this agency that really does allow the viewer to kind of be like, ooh, I could be a Keith. Like, oh my goodness. Tell me about kind of stepping into that role.
Well, am I correct that you'll see this film after this discussion? Is that right?
Oh, no, they saw it before.
You just saw it. You've seen it before. Great.
No spoilers, so don't worry.
I
They've
got
been
you.
spoiled.
I just, yeah. So, yeah, it wouldn't be a spoiler anyway. Just, you see how beautifully that scene, it's really just one scene, sits in the film. Maybe just the way it's, the whole frame of the film is so interesting because it's such a big thing, but of course we're just seeing it from such a small group of people, just a few. So it's very small. It's very ordinary, except something extremely extraordinary is happening. So it has those dualities throughout. And that's what I saw most in the character. I heard Spike Lee speak about duality in a lot of his films, and that really turned me on. So anyway, I can think like Spike Lee, I will. And I'm determined still to be in one of his casts. So, yeah, we can all dream, right?
There we go.
But thank you for asking. I didn't even remember his name was Keith because he feels so well. I
didn't have a name in the script. We added his name in at the last second.
Good. So there it wasn't me just not paying attention. Thanks. Asterisk.
The name of the script is just Man in the Diner.
Man in the Diner is how I took him. So if he was named that way in the script, it gives that sort of other world to it. So obviously this whole thing's happening outside of regular time and space even. They're making their own space, looking for, hoping. And so anyway, I was watching it, and I thought the acting was really good.
Hey, there we go.
Go ahead and say it.
Fantastic.
Because the assignment was really interesting. It was to do one scene in the middle of a movie that has really it doesn't speed up the narrative. It doesn't add to the story. Of course it does. But it's not driving part of the film. So then it really was just about the acting. And that's why we're all here, is about that. And then how it was so beautifully shot and captured the design, of course, of that room, but the way the feel of it. I'm also really proud that you can get that I got a pocket donut in any movie ever. So that was a real sense of accomplishment, Yeah, I almost got the other one. I look over and I take that one. I take a bite, and then as I'm talking, I save it for later. Well, the world's about to end. You may not have that many more encounters with the donut, right? It's one of the true wonders of life. But the reason why I liked the acting is because there was so much that wasn't said. So that then goes back to the script and to the idea of this sort of void world. It's a pre-apocalyptic movie is what I like to call it because it's about to happen. Mm-hmm. So obviously it's the calm right before the storm. Except this guy kind of walks in and he's got this torrent going on in his mind. He's so tortured. I wasn't playing for dangerous, but then, of course, the scene takes that turn with the weapon. So, yeah, I can't say too much more than that. It was a thrill to play it. I love how you approached your character, but I'll say to that, a lot of my exteriors, that suit really dirtied up my shirt, all that stuff. So that does it. But the atmosphere. So some of that was more less like breaking down the script because I'm not playing a whole character that has a beginning and a very definite end. So mine was more instinctive, right? Which it sounds like you kind of arrived at as part of your process. I just only had that for this because it wasn't rooted in a lot of prep or even though it's so integral to the film. It's, as I said, it's not as involved a part as the one that you were working on. So anyway, just to point out that contrast, you can be good and do it like any old way.
Well, one thing that scene in particular kind of does is it shows that juxtaposition of, oh, I'm just a guy trying to get breakfast in a diner, and oh, the world's about to end. And how do those two meet? And there's this time when you two are really feeling each other out. You're like, oh, is he dangerous? Yeah. And then they're like, oh, are they dangerous? Or, they're just kids, and, what can we do? And he's like, where are we going? And it's like, nowhere.
Well, the movie pulls a great trick. It gives you this hopeless situation, and yet it's riddled with hope. Right. So in order to show some contrast to that, one of the character has to be out of it, out of hope completely. So I think I ring that bell in these characters' storyline, and so they persevere through that hopelessness and continue. She still wants to see her grandma. They still want to make it to the finish line of their life, even if it's just 3 days from now. So it's super important part. I don't mean to underplay that, but I love the way it felt in the film.
I love it. Well, the whole film in and of itself, you talked about the atmosphere, the environment, the feel of it. And we kind of start with Rose and Michael, like checking out the sunset and how beautiful it is. Tell us about coming to the lighting decisions. Rachel. Yeah.
That's a great question. When I read the script and I was like, 7 sunsets, 5 stars, like, and they're 5 pages long. I was like, yes, I can do this. This is gonna be great. I mean, I got really lucky with this guy and a great collaboration with my director, and just finding a visual language that we felt served the story, because I think it was important for us. Like, you have these pre-apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic movies that are sort of dark, and this isn't like Cormac McCarthy, The Road. It was, each moment is beautiful because it might be the last sunset you see, or might be the last rain that you see, and so we wanted that to live and elevate what was going on between Rose and Michael. So yes, it stylized, soft lighting was the thing, definitely, and just timing, scouting and timing for the sunsets and making sure, and just definitely stressful, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, that's so hard to do in a movie schedule. So that goes to the producers too, and the UPM, and was able to deliver on that. Yeah, because that's a tall ask on a script. Then you add rain, and then you're like,
yes, it's a lot. And everyone was on board. Like, we were all on the same team and on the same page, and everyone just wanted this to be a great experience. And Andrew was fantastic leader of us all, and but it is a stylized look. Like, we chose that. It was definitely a choice, and we wanted it to feel soft and beautiful, and just similar to what similar to what Rose is, just the beauty in those small moments, and be grounded in that. So that's what we were hoping to accomplish. But yeah,
I want to ask the two Andrews, talk to me about the timing of the film. There's a slowness in an effort to rush. There's this kind of introspective frustration. We're like, I got to get to my grandmother. Let's deliver this letter first, and I got to get to my grandmother. Let's play laser tag. I got to get to my grandmother. Oh, a sunset. Yeah. Tell me
I got to live it up.
Yeah, the idea of that timing and what it kind of means to the film, and just basically how you both kind of worked on it. Was it something that was written into the script, or is that something that you worked out with Andrew?
I mean, it was definitely something that was written into the script. And, I think we had gotten comments even in like the script phase of like, this kind of meanders at points. But I mean, that was the point of these two characters, and these two characters were supposed to, even though the impending doom is coming, feel free. And they've been kind of on the run. They've been on the loose. And like, I think sometimes it's hard to lose that almost like childlike energy when it comes to like, even when you have stuff to do, like, yeah, the side quests are going to be fun. Like, hell yeah, we're going to play some laser tag, like we might bury the dead farmer in the field, like it's, so yeah, I think that was always in the script. And then it was just kind of figuring out how we were going to piece it all together.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like Andrew said, it did come up in the script stage, and I know you didn't mean it as a criticism or anything. But yeah, but I always felt like, I know you probably, I always felt like, yeah, my view was Rose really wants to get to her grandmother for the closure that she ultimately does not get, of just telling her how much she meant to her and yada yada. In that, it was not about, oh, we need to spend 3 days with my grandma, but I need to see her and get that closure, so it didn't necessarily matter when. And the meandering is definitely, yeah, to me it's the heart of the movie, and to me was the whole purpose. Like Dermot said, that in a nutshell, we always wanted the movie to be the ordinary in the face of the extraordinary, because I think the extraordinary in the face of the extraordinary has been done, and has been done very well, very many times within this genre. And so, not to compare ourselves to that level, we would never hope to achieve, but we always wanted to make, like, what if Richard Linklater made an End of the World movie, kind of like a Before Sunrise or Before Midnight, just kind of, walkie and talkie kind of set against the backdrop of the End of the World. I thought was an interesting contrast.
And just to clarify, when I was asking about the script, because, in a script, it's like, they're heading toward grandmother's house and they take a detour. And then the act of actually visualizing that and that collaboration, how that kind of came together. Because I think that the meandering was the thing. There is something, again, it builds in this tension, this kind of frustration where they're going towards nothing in an effort to get there, but then they're also trying to push it off a little bit too. And I thought that it was just so beautifully displayed, like in your acting and the cinematography, directing. Tell me, Andrew, what was a point where you said, this is something as a director I want to add to this film. This is the mark that I want to make on this film.
I think that, like, there definitely came a point where I was, like, reading the script. I'm from Michigan, so I grew up in the Midwest, and, like, there was a point in reading this script where, like, I very much felt like this was, like, for lack of a better term, like the end of summer. And you don't feel like the end is coming, but like fall is gonna come. Like, when you're growing up, like, school's coming, whatnot, and, like, it's a very definite feeling that, like, there's just one day that it's over. And even if it's coming, like, you just don't really want to either acknowledge that it's coming or, you just kind of want to live in the moment. And so I think, like, that was a really big piece for me. And that's kind of, like, how I approached, working with all of them, and then, like, how we shot it and whatnot. And I think the best review that I ever read was two characters going through the Midwest, and I was like, oh, well, I mean, it's clearly Southern California, but thank God somebody said the Midwest, because I was so happy.
I thought it was the Midwest too, and then I was like, what are they wearing? Like, what's going on? You guys, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me about this movie. Please give them a good round of applause.
Thank you so much, you guys. Lots of love all around. Thank you.
And I had one last thing.
Oh,
Just
Thank you.
one very last thing. I would be remiss, since we are in a room full of actors. I think one of the most beautiful parts of this movie, I doubt anybody clocked it because they've got different last names, but June's mom actually plays her grandma in the movie, Dana Anderson. And she's incredible. And Dana very tragically passed away before we could finish the movie. That's why I don't know if anybody noticed. The movie is dedicated in her honor. But I think that's, like June said, she grew up doing theater with her mom. I think that's one of the beautiful things about the acting community and my favorite part of the movie.
That's so sweet. Thank you for sharing that.